Right then, so here we are going to talk about sourdough. There's three stages I always think of sourdough. There's the mother, which is a completely different thing that we will talk about another day. The actual proving of it and the energy that goes into it to help it mature, become bubbly and become bread as it were. And as it were, apart from instead of pastries. And then the baking. The reason why I split it into three different things is it can get very confusing. If you're listening to people out there in the Ethernet, they will tell you different reasons, different things, different recipes, different start times, different proving times, different temperatures. Da, da, da. So we're just going to have a look at. I'm going to try a recipe today, which I like to think is going to be a little bit easier to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this starter. If I'm honest, I think it's past its best. When I say its best, let's say past its peak, not its best. So I've zeroed that out. I'm going to put 100 grams of this in here. I just thought I'm going to match that with some warm water. Now I've got this really handy scoop here. Oh, I've gone a little bit over. Actually, do you know what I'm thinking? I'm going to go with 125. The theory goes that this is the live bit. So because it's live, and I'm using organic spelt flour to make my starter with, but because it's live, it what's the thing I'm trying to think about? Because it's live, you could use less of it and it'll be more hungry during the proving stage and become bigger. Whereas I used to think if you use sort of 50-50 starter and flour, that it would sort of double in size. But it seems to be the less you use and the more proving you do, the bigger it gets. But again, I think it also depends on how lively your starter is. This has been fed 3 times in the last 3 days. And every time it's been fed, it's doubled a little bit. I've taken some out and I've used it for pancakes, and I'll put some more in, But I have seen people use a smaller jar than this, use all their starter, and all that's left is a little bit around the edge. They put flour and water in that and then restart it from that. I've always thought it's too dangerous to use that. But I used to have a massive jar of it, and now I've reduced it down to this size. But the main thing is here is to put the starter in with some water. So I'm going to zero that out. I'm going to match that with about the same amount of water. And I use this bowl. It's meant for that, but you can bake bread in it, sort of thing. But it's just easy, and it's a bit lazy, if I'm honest. And then this is I can't remember what it's called, like a Dutch spatula or something. But the first thing to do, I think this is always quite important, is to break this starter down into a liquid. And then the way I look at that is all the germs are being spread into much more surface area. So this liquid's very live. And then what we're going to do is basically just get that like that. Then we're going to put some flour on. I'll put this back on there. Now remember, I've got the spoon and everything in there. We're going to zero that out. There we go. And I'm going for organic. We need strong white flour to make this recipe work. Now, if I'm honest, I've seen loads of different recipes, different styles, different amounts of liquid, different amounts of starter. As I say, some people use a small amount of starter, and then they seem to leave it a little bit longer, and it still doubles. And then other people use a little bit more starter, and a little bit less flour. My main point with this is there's loads of different recipes out there, and I think one of the key things is how long you're going to prove it for, and then also what temperature you're in, because a lot of people live in the States or whatever, their ambient temperatures 18, 19, 20 degrees even overnight, whereas a lot of people in Europe are more sort of like 18 19. So I've put 125 grams of starter. It was a little bit more than that. And then I matched that with 125 water, and then I put 350 flour. And if you can see, it sort of goes, I say it goes quite dry like this. So this is going to need, and this is where I go a bit rogue from everyone else, because I haven't been that precise. So I'm just going to put a little water in there. Because what I'm after this, I'm after it to go into a dough. I like this straggly stuff because to me it means it's been mixed in well. But I think if it goes too dry, the yeast in the starter, the active bit of the starter, dies out, sort of thing. It needs food and it needs water. I have done this so that it's been really wet, like so wet that you wouldn't want to. I say you wouldn't want to touch it with your hands, but yeah, really sticky. And then what I was trying to do there was to see whether, as a sticky solution, because the starter's quite wet, and it doubles in size quite easily. And I thought, well, if the dough is quite sticky, then it will do the same thing. So what we're going to do with this, I'm calling this my sort of easy recipe, because there's loads out there that sort of like do this for 10 minutes, leave it for half an hour, take it out, do like a French plait on it to get some air into it, etc, etc. Now it's a bit wetter than I would have liked, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to work this in, and obviously you're seeing this live. This is why I like this thing. A lot of people obviously get it out of their hands now and start working this, and it might be a little bit drier as well. And then I've heard other tips like, put some oil on your hands so it doesn't stick to your hands, or put some water on your hands, or put some flour. But then I think you're adding more food to it. So I quite like doing it here. The thing I do know is that it needs sort of half an hour resting now, because we put all that flour in there and we put that liquid in there and it's all mixed up. I'll tell you one thing we're going to miss. Hold on there 2 seconds. What I forgot, well, not forgotten, we could have put this in earlier, is salt. Now I use Himalayan salt in everything. I never use sodium chloride. I just don't think you should. I always use rock salt. More about it, shouldn't be using seed oils either, but anyway, there's a little bit out there. Probably don't need to know that. So, don't underestimate the salt. I did make one loaf once. I've forgotten to put the salt in, and it wasn't horrible, but it was very strange. Just seemed to be really bland and lacking in flavour. And then I've done them a few times where I've tried to keep the salt down, just because I've got this like, oh, you don't need to put too much salt in it, but it does affect the flavour. It's a good flavour enhancer. I think the Himalayan rock salt's got minerals in it as well, so let's not worry about it. Let's just get that salt in. Now that I put in there, it was about 6 or 7 grams. I mean, I've seen up to 12, but then you'd normally be working with more like half a kilo. You could go with 125 grams of starter and then put half a kilo of flour in, but then you'd match that with sort of 350 millilitres of water. I think that's right. I'll write it down in the thing what I've done here. But this feels to me perfect, right? So as I'm working it, it's becoming more elastic. If you can see that, see the way it's stretching like little fingers. Again, it's probably dry enough that I could take this out and work it by hand, but I'm going to be a little bit lazy. I also think this does do a good job. What we're trying to do is feed some air into it. So I'm pulling it over, I'm sort of pushing the air into it and wrapping it. And to do that by hand, use this like stretching technique. I think this is too soft for that sort of stretching technique. At the moment, what we're trying to do is mix all the ingredients together, get all the liquid into the flour, get the starter around as much as possible, put some energy into it, some energy so that it starts I think, I can't remember what the process is called, but it's where the gluten comes out, I think now. It's where the stretchy thing. So we're going to bundle that up together like that, and we are going to, so you could do this in a bowl, you could be doing it over here, put it all back together again, but because I've got this, I can just bundle this up. And then if you've got a bowl, you put polythene over the top of it, or a lid over the top of it, but we don't want it to dry out. So I'm going to leave that for 30 minutes, come back, work it, and I'm going to leave it, basically I'm going to roll it for at least 3, maybe 6, sort of depending on how I feel, and then I'm going to leave it out overnight to prove and to eat. So I'm going to try and put some energy in it by folding it, and I'm going to leave it overnight, and then in the morning I'm going to take that straight out and put it into the oven. Now, while I'm thinking about it, I might, because one of the big things that I haven't been doing but did work last time was cold proving. So I proved it like this. It's quite cold today as well, so I could prove it in the oven as well. But it's, what I find a pain is all this mixing every half hour, every hour or whatever. I don't think it's sustainable in a busy household. So I have done it where I've only mixed it a couple of times. So we might only do 3. Let's see how we get on.